get the opinion of former Eskom CEO Jacob Maroga on this. Mr. Maroga, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. Just first of all, I remember around March, April, the minister was talking about the possibility of stage 8, and he was very adamant about that. So right now, obviously, South Africans seeing at least 1 or 2 days of no power cuts a week. Was it a case of under-promise and then over-service?
Well, Marcelo, I think it was Eskom that gave a prognosis of what they called the winter plan. And they were giving scenarios. And one of the scenarios was that if demand is high and they've got low availability, stage 8 is possible. And I think that was the basis for the prognosis of stage 8. But what we have seen is that we've seen a better performance and not higher than forecasted demand. And we're now averaging at worst stage 3, which I think is good for winter. I think that's really where we are now.
I think a lot of South Africans appreciate that. And previously, they had said they expect the demand to be about 34,000 to 36,000 megawatts. That was the demand that they were expecting during this winter season. They announced yesterday that, in fact, demand is just over 30,000 megawatts. What would you attribute that to? Is it because there are companies and people who've moved away from the grid slightly? Could that be one of the reasons?
Well, yes. Look, firstly, why do we get a high demand in winter? Because of the weather, lots of heating happens. But number two is that the Eskom tariffs are structured in such a way that during winter, if you are a big user, you almost get punished if you use a lot of power during winter. So what happens is that the large industrial customers will normally schedule their maintenance during winter so that they can avoid the high tariffs. So the combination of high tariffs and maybe even if it's cold now, but you must look at the overall winter. Has it been colder than anticipated? If it's not, then demand is lower. So those are the two issues: weather and the usage by large customers in terms of avoiding the high tariffs of winter.
Mr. Maroga, we saw in December, we saw high stages of load shedding during summer seasons. And I know that it's because some of the power stations needed to be switched off. For instance, your Kucha, etc., needed to be switched off for planned maintenance. That's all good and well. But, in terms of the minister saying yesterday they've been able to put their generating capacity at 60%, something we haven't seen in many months. As someone who is an engineer at Eskom, what could have taken them that long to get us to 60%? And what exactly did they do to get us there?
Well, I think, firstly, let's be grateful that the performance has improved.
Yeah.
And I think we need time to see whether it's consistent performance. But there are positive things that I think are beginning to happen. Clearly, in terms of just focus on the Eskom fleet, and being clear that that is the biggest lever to take us out of load shedding. I think the change in leadership, especially the appointment of a permanent generation head, who has been there for many, many years and has got experience, and I think he also got the trust of his team. And I think the Minister of Electricity as well, I think, in terms of his focus, now you have somebody at a political level who has a razor focus on the issues of Eskom, and he has elevated the conversation around the issues that is needed to be done. So the whole atmosphere around Eskom has fundamentally changed. There's more positive, more focus, and I think all of those combine to see and to show a better performance. And I think going forward, it can only be positive, but it's still early days. Machines behave the way they do. They can break down, but so far so good.
And that's what I was about to ask you, that should we be excited as South Africans that we're out of the woods? And could it be possible that during warmer seasons we'll see the stages of load shedding lower even further if they keep at what they're doing at the moment?
Well, if they keep at what they're doing at the moment, and if the performance continue at this rate, less than 15,000 megawatts of breakdowns, I think it should be positive going forward. But we should also be careful not to be over optimistic. It will take some time for things to stabilize, but so far so good. And I think we should encourage them to do whatever they're doing to do it even more.
All right. And just lastly, the minister speaking yesterday about how much business is also contributing, how much, the president's energy plan that was announced last July is in full swing now, particularly when it comes to speaking to experts in the industry. This was about time, wasn't it, Mr. Maroga, instead of taking us this long since before 2008?
Well, look. I think. I mean, let's say the president's energy plan, the appointment of the energy minister, the changes in leadership within Eskom, those are beginning to show positive results. And as I say, let's leave it for a while and see what happens. But it's all positive. I think we are moving in the right direction. The conversation with stakeholders, with business, their contribution to the reduction of demand as well, and that is all positive. And I think we should see, towards the end of the year whether this can be sustained. But I'm positive that the situation is changing.
Mr. Maroga, I remember I asked you a question a few months ago, possibly, if you would be willing to assist if you were approached, and you said yes. And there was something very important that you said to me during that interview. And you said you thought that Eskom was concentrating too much on IPPs instead of working on the equipment, the expensive infrastructure that we already have. So I guess because of that particular advice that probably other people in your fraternity shared with government, this is why we're seeing this happen now. They're actually concentrating on the expensive infrastructure that we already have instead of just IPPs.
Yes, I think it's a balance. But for now, I think, the most important lever to end load shedding is to have an improved and consistent performance of the coal fleet of Eskom that we have. That is the biggest lever. And I think you could see in the minister's posture, Minister of Electricity's posture in Eskom, that is what they're focusing on. Yes, and I think the minister has people around him who have a deeper understanding of the energy system, and is coming through in terms of the things that he focuses on. So I think all of that, is creating a positive atmosphere.
I can imagine even for those system operators who had a lot of stress of looking at the system and letting the minister know that we needed stage 6 at some point was quite stressful. So at least now it's gotten a bit better. Thank you very much for speaking to us. That was former Eskom CEO Jacob Maroga. And just because I said at least, it doesn't mean I'm saying that it's okay that we are on stage 3. We shouldn't have load shedding. We should actually have uninterrupted power. It's 2023.